Useless truisms versus strategies. There are a lot of cool truisms that sound pretty good, but what's often missing is a usable strategy. On a more meta scale, you'll find this everywhere. Technically, it's when we humans mistake a description for a cause. This is kind of hard to wrap your mind around, but consider something like gravity, the law of gravity. Let's say I held out my hand that held a ball and I dropped the ball. And I asked, why did it fall to the ground? The sensible answer would be gravity. But is this answer really correct? And no, I'm specifically not talking about Newton's idea of gravity versus Einstein's idea of gravity. Just for the sake of this argument, let's assume that Einstein's idea of gravity doesn't exist. So, is it true that the ball falls to the ground because of gravity? Once upon a time, Newton noticed these things falling to the ground, and he looked up at the sky, the moon, the sun, the stars, and he suspected the same thing was holding that stuff up there together, that the earth was attracted to the sun the same way that falling things were attracted to the earth. So he took a bunch of measurements and came up with an equation that described this process, and he named this gravity. Now, does the mathematical law of gravity cause things to move around? Or is Newton's gravity equation merely a mathematical description of what is always happening? I let go of the ball and it drops to the ground. This is one collection of words that describes what happens. There is a force of attraction between objects based on the distance between them, their respective masses, and a universal gravitational constant. This is another description. So the brain-bending truth is that the following statement, the balls drop to the ground because of gravity, is really the same as the balls drop to the ground because they drop to the ground. We can predict that if I let go of the ball, it will drop to the ground because that's what it always does. Never has it floated up into the sky. Now, where is all this metaphysical hooey going? Back to those truisms. Here's a story about two Buddhists. They're out on a stroll and they see a hot young lady. The Buddhists, at least this kind, are not allowed to touch hot young ladies. But this hot young lady begs one of the Buddhists to carry her across the river. So he does. They continue on their walk. An hour later, the other Buddhist asks his master, "Why did you pick her up? That is forbidden." The other Buddhist says, "I put her down an hour ago, but you are still carrying her." Boom! Cool story, one you've likely heard, but it is a description. That holding on to stuff that happened in the past is bad. That letting go of that stuff is good. But this silly story doesn't do jack when you actually need to put something down. That takes a little bit of work. Luckily, it's not much more work. And the benefits are enormous. To learn how to actually do that, visit mindpersuasion.com/3x3.